This story starts with an image you might recognize, an ancient place of refuge for the weary and the lost. But it doesn't take place 2,000 years ago. It happens today, in a location you would absolutely never expect.
Yeah, the Sea of Galilee, a place where fishermen and outcasts gathered, where life was raw and real. It was a haven. But what if that same kind of sacred space could be found today? Not by some beautiful lake, but somewhere far more, well, ordinary. A cold asphalt parking lot, a place of transactions, of empty bottles and small change. This is the modern Galilee for our narrator, Sung-Moo Kim. And his journey there didn't start with some grand vision. Nope, it started with a quiet, uncomfortable feeling of being trapped behind fences of his own making.
He felt this disconnect, a hypocrisy between his faith and his life, all safe within his own comfortable world. He wanted to lower those fences, to step out. But how? Well, the answer came on one of the absolute coldest days of the year.
And that's all it took. On a brutally cold Saturday, he saw his friend Dave with this plastic bag of sandwiches he'd made for the hungry. So he just asked a simple question, "Can I come with you?" Out there in the biting wind, they gave a sandwich to a woman huddled under an awning. And her smile, he said it cut right through the cold and changed everything. That small act became the first step in a new calling, what he would come to call the least ministry.
Soon after, a musician on the street told him, "If you're looking for people like you, go to the Uptown Bottle Depot." So he went. And when he and his family decided to join the small gathering there, they knew they couldn't just bring something they bought from a store. It had to be a piece of themselves.
And their choice of what to bring, well, it was telling. It wasn't fancy or complicated. It was the one thing their family made best: banana bread. A simple, humble offering, but one made with real intention, with love, and with that unmistakable smell of home.
They mashed the bananas by hand so you could still feel the texture. It was an honest taste of home. Someone once told them, with tears in their eyes, "This tastes just like my mom used to make." See, in this parking lot, they found it wasn't about a program, but a person, the quiet center of this whole unlikely community.
And this is Peter. For over 3 decades, think about that. Every single Saturday, he would show up with 2 huge pots of soup, steam rising into the freezing air. He didn't preach or organize, he just served. He'd eat the same soup, stand in the same cold, share a joke. And what he taught was the most profound lesson of all. Ministry isn't about doing things for people, it's about simply being with them.
And then a really remarkable thing started to happen. The giving started to flow both ways. It wasn't a one-way street of charity, not at all. It was a circle of mutual grace. This became crystal clear after a special Thanksgiving dinner they hosted.
A few days after the dinner, a letter arrived at the church. It was from a man who had attended. He wrote that by the time they received it, he'd already be on a bus to Vancouver. He called them a ray of sunshine and enclosed a small, humble gift.
Just $5. But as he held it, he felt what he described as a colossal weight. It was the widow's mite from the Bible, a gift that was perhaps everything the giver had. It showed that everyone, no matter their situation, has something to give. And this grace just kept returning week after week.
This whole idea of a promise is embodied by Rudy, a quiet man who's been coming for over 20 years. One day he started placing a $2 coin in the narrator's hand each week to help pay for the soup. As the narrator reflects, it wasn't just money, it was a promise to see each other again. This grace kept returning, like when an elderly lady named Merlin would bring a jar of peanut butter for the sandwiches. Each gift was just this quiet act of communion.
That spirit of shared community just blossomed in the fall of 2018. Looking at the faces on the street, they saw a longing for home, for the memory of a warm family meal. So they decided to turn the church gymnasium into a banquet hall for Thanksgiving.
And crucially, they decided the church's teenagers would lead the entire event. They empowered them to be the hosts, the decorators, the DJs. The adults simply opened the door and watched as the kids created a space where everyone was truly treated like family.
Just look at this. The room was totally transformed. There were no givers and receivers, no rich and poor, just people sharing a meal, listening to music, laughing together. It was, in his words, like the wedding at Cana, a moment of miraculous, joyful abundance.
But this work isn't always filled with joyful feasts. It's often quiet, heartbreaking, and challenging. It's about bearing witness to profound unmet needs. And sometimes that need is symbolized by something as small and as devastating as a pair of shoes.
He recalls an elderly woman named Janet. She was wearing shoes so large for her tiny, frail body that she had to drag them across the asphalt. The sound of those shoes scraping the ground, it was the sound of a need he couldn't yet meet. And it illustrates the core of the ministry. It's not about solving every problem. It's about showing up year after year in the face of it.
And so the ministry continued to build. From that first cold day with Dave to the shared feast, right through the isolation of the pandemic, and now to a place where a musician friend fills the parking lot with music. Volunteers have come and gone, but the presence remains.
See, the goal was never growth or numbers. It wasn't about building a bigger organization. The greatest lesson he learned was to let go of results. The only task was to be faithful, to bake the bread, make the soup, and show up. To create a space where, for a few hours on a Saturday morning, a cold parking lot can become a place of grace.
And so this story leaves us with a question, doesn't it? This was one man's Galilee, found in a bottle depot, a place where he learned to lower the fences around his heart. So the question for us is, where's ours?